Hi, all. Welcome to the Holistic Ascent podcast, where we talk about specific wellness tools, resources, and practices to become more empowered in our wellness journeys. I'm Lexi Heron, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. Amy Novotny today. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thanks for having me on, Lexi. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk and share.
Likewise. So, you have developed your own institute called the PABR Institute, PABR Institute. Would you mind sharing more about that with us in the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this many years ago because I wanted to help people in a different way, calm down their fight or flight nervous system to alleviate chronic pain, stress, anxiety, insomnia, the need for various orthopedic surgeries, and much more. As I've learned, this nervous system that affects all of us affects all of our organ systems. So when you learn how to calm it down, you get a lot of health benefits out of it. And it can be physical, mental, emotional. It can be just on various levels. And so I'm excited that I can help people worldwide by doing this online.
I love that. So you do everything totally remote all around the world. That's amazing. So
Yep.
you're able to provide this resource to so many different audiences. Very
Yep.
cool. Did you have
Yeah.
something within your own personal story that led you into more of this holistic approach to nervous system regulation?
Yeah. So I started off with physical therapy, got my doctorate in that. And I did that for about 5 years. And during that time, I started running marathons. And I was training to qualify for Boston. I came close, but I couldn't quite get that speed up to qualify for Boston. And so I started not, this was just happened at the same time. I just decided to take some courses through a place called the Postural Restoration Institute. And they got me thinking differently about our breathing mechanics and how we hold our body position. And so I just started experimenting with myself while I was running on a treadmill. So I'd run 3 days a week, 8 miles on the treadmill in 55 minutes. And as I was running, if I changed how I held my rib cage position and changed my breathing mechanics, I could feel my body calm down in the middle of running fast.
Wow.
So if I changed it a certain way, what we typically think of runners, stretch, arch your back, suck up your gut, I felt my body tighten up. And that's very useful if I want to run fast for a very short distance.
Right.
But for this, I wanted to be able to run longer distances and run fast and calm. So I just started playing with my rib cage position and I could feel my body calm down. And as soon as I did that, it was like, the Coyote and Roadrunner little cartoon.
Yes.
I felt like my legs could just do this really fast turnover and my body just
Wow.
was like along for the ride.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it felt great too. And so when I got done with my treadmill run, 8 miles, typically I had a routine of stretch, foam roll, scrape, all that. I got done off of the treadmill. I didn't have to do that stuff. It's like, wow, I didn't feel like I had to run.
Oh my
I just
goodness.
ran. And so I was like, okay, I'll just kind of experiment with this. And I checked with other colleagues. I'm like, okay, runners, do you guys have this experience? And most people had no clue what I was talking about. And so I realized, okay, I was on to something. So
Yes,
let me experiment with it more. And then the next marathon I ran without changing anything else in my routine, I dropped 7 minutes, which is a big time drop
that is.
for just like a couple months of no changes in training, just adjusting my breathing mechanics and calming my nervous system down. And I blinked
Wow.
through the qualifying marks for Boston. And then a couple months later, I dropped another 7 minutes and I flew on the races and I wasn't having pain during the marathons either.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, I'm on to something. So I need to start putting it into a process. And so that's what I did. Over time, I asked other, at that time, PT patients, I said, hey, I want to try this on you. Are you okay with it? And some said yes, some said no. And the ones that said yes, I said, okay, let's try this. And they got better faster, which was like,
Wow.
whoa, okay, let me now develop this more. And so that's kind of how it came to be in developing this process. And at the time, also, my mom was passing away. So I was under a lot of stress. And so this really helped me calm myself down during that process of her going through a battle with cancer. And I could use it to help me mitigate those stresses, as well as feel my body release the emotional impact of her passing, as well as the physical impact of running marathons.
Wow, that's incredible because it has such like a wide scope, whether you're doing this crazy endurance sort of exercise or whether you're just going through some deep emotional things or you're healing from an injury or all of that. Would you be able to dig more into the method that you've created through this?
Yeah, sure. So what I do when I work with someone, so like let's say we were working together.
Yeah.
So I would have you just do a couple daily motions. What I can tell a lot from people is just having them walk in front of me.
Mm,
I can watch how they're holding the rib cage position, how they're breathing, how they're moving. And so what I'm looking at is how are you physically stimulating the fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, when you move, when you
mm,
breathe. Because when you move and breathe, those physical things are filling up your whole entire day.
yeah.
So if the way that you move and the way that you breathe stimulates the nervous system more than we want it to, it's going to ramp your body up so your body's in a high alert mode.
Mm,
Now, any mental or emotional or spiritual stressors that you have on a body that's physically overstimulated will make those mental, emotional, and spiritual stressors seem harder or seem at a greater intensity.
makes
So your
sense.
body's already on edge physically because of how you put it that you don't even know you're doing. And then you have the other mental, emotional stressors. So it just heightens things at a greater danger for your body. So your
Mm.
body responds even more, and you get into the cyclical pattern that's hard to break.
Right.
All because you didn't know that your breathing mechanics were set up to put you in fight or flight mode, and the way that you hold yourself is putting you in fight or flight mode. So
That's
what we
so interesting.
Yeah, and so what we have to do is then get your rib cage to change how it's positioned on your body
Mm.
so that your body gets permission to relax.
Okay, so is this almost like if we're in that fight or flight mode all the time and we're struggling with that nervous system regulation, is it more like we're just taking a lot of really shallow breaths and as a result of that rib cage position and we're learning to be able to take more full and like slow breaths? Is that kind of behind it or a piece of it?
That's a piece of it. Yes, that's
Okay.
a piece of it. So,
Yeah.
yes, if our rib cage is lifted up or tilted up and back, and you
Right.
can tell if you put your hands on your front lower ribs, if there's a drop off of those ribs,
Mm,
if you feel like a ridge right there, you
yeah.
know that your rib cage is lifted up in front.
Okay.
So it's going to change your breathing mechanics so that you have to lift your ribs up and elevate them to get air
Mm,
in,
okay.
which for a while that will work and you can get enough air in, but eventually your ribs can't lift up any higher and your breath becomes more shallow. So that's where what you're talking about comes into
Yeah.
play.
Wow.
Now, people who think they're doing diaphragmatic breathing by doing belly breathing, they're actually not tapping into calming the nervous system because all that they're doing is abdominal distension. They're
Right.
trying to push their abdominal wall out to try to get air in, but that's not actually helping because that's not filling up the lungs the way that we're really trying to
Mm.
target. And it actually doesn't help use the diaphragm. So the diaphragm needs help by the front lower ribs dropping down to support it on the walls. So the
Mm.
walls of the diaphragm are supported so the dome can drop down. That pulls air in like a negative pressure system, like your vacuum.
Right.
So
Wow.
we want to shift away from this idea that belly breathing is diaphragmatic breathing because, and nothing against people who teach that. And sorry if you do,
No.
but it's really you're just pushing the abdominal wall out instead of we want the abdominal wall to pull down
Right.
so that the wall of the diaphragm is supported so the dome of the diaphragm can drop down.
Oh,
So,
that makes sense from a physiological and an anatomical
yes.
perspective, most definitely.
Yes. And I kind of try to equate it. So if you think of like a grain silo, so a grain silo, it's a dome and then there's long, tall walls because it's holding grain.
Right.
The walls have to be strong in order to hold that dome. If the walls fall, the dome flattens and it doesn't really do anything. And we want strong walls for our diaphragm.
Most
So
definitely.
that way the diaphragm can do what it's supposed to do, which is pull air in without you using the neck, shoulders, ribs, back to do that. So that's
Wow.
why what we're working on is really your mechanics of how you breathe, which is
Yes.
extremely critical to get your body to be able to calm the nervous system down.
Oh my goodness. I love this because I think it's such a unique perspective that's not really talked about. Like I've never really heard of the approach of like the way that we're actually physically carrying ourselves is affecting our nervous system. I've really only explored like external triggers or even internal triggers like emotions and what we're eating and things like that affecting our nervous system, but just physically the way that our body is, that's really incredibly fascinating to me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that because
Yeah.
it really matters. And let me give you all kind of an idea of how to sense this
Yeah.
and kind of just give you almost like a real life example.
Cool.
So if you think about when you're sleep deprived in the middle of the afternoon, you're tired and you yawn, what most people do is quite a few people do, is they lift their arms up and stretch backwards. And they stretch. And they're like, oh, and they try to stretch their back or arch their back to wake themselves up. So they're trying to get their back muscles to compress on the fight or flight nervous system that lies along the spine to wake them up because they're tired. Maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep. So people do this automatically. If you think about dogs and cats, what do they do when they get up? They arch their back to wake them up so that they're ready to pounce or play or whatever. So we do this innately, but the problem becomes when we sit with our rib cage tilted back and our back muscles are on all the time. Then our body is on all the time and our muscles start to guard us as if we were in danger.
Right.
And that's where we get the sensation of we're tight. So anyone who
Yes.
tells me my hamstrings are tight or my back feels tight or my calves feel tight, you know they're in a fight or flight mode. So, and we try to shift them out of that as quickly as possible.
Right. Oh my goodness. That's so interesting.
It's fun to educate people and get them to think differently.
Yeah, most definitely. So when you see that someone's rib cage or maybe their function is not as ideal as possible for supporting the nervous system, then what are your first steps that you take in working with them after you've established, okay, it looks like there is some work we can do here? Are there specific exercises you're giving them or routines you're putting them through? What does that look like?
Sure. So everyone is slightly different, but generally speaking, we're going to start to work on how they position themselves sitting, standing, lying down, and then work on changing the breathing mechanics. We have to change exhalation first because the ribcage has to learn how to drop down in order to change the way you inhale. Then once we've worked on those pieces, we work on how do we get the person to stabilize in a relaxed position, because it's one thing to get someone to relax, but if they don't know how to exist there and stabilize their body there, they go right back into tension mode. And that rebellion back into tension mode is not fun for most people. So what I'm giving them is a variety of exercises, but it's not exercises that you would think of. It's not let's lift up a weight and do a bicep curl. It's let's get you into a position that your body needs. We're going to add in a breathing component to it and then get you to sense a muscle react and contract, or sense a muscle relax. So we're trying to get the body to shift how it stabilizes itself, but also how it moves. Now, the hard part is if a person has had trauma. So when you bring in PTSD, trauma, high levels of stress or anxiety or panic, then that person has a strong overlay of when they contract a muscle, the muscle just guards and locks up. So if someone has a trauma in their past that we don't have to necessarily go through the actual trauma, but I need to be aware of it.
Yes.
Then we have to look at how are they contracting a muscle, because there's going to be an emotional overlay into it and we don't want it to go too hard. that then they feel pain related to that muscle contracting.
Okay.
So all of that matters.
Yeah.
Does.
Yeah. The body keeps the score. That's one of my most interesting books that set me on a deep rabbit hole of how we carry ourselves. And that just is proof right here. Oh
It
my
really does.
goodness. So when you implemented this for yourself, was it literally overnight that you experienced this change? You just one day switched your position of your ribs while you were running and then you immediately noticed that difference, or was it you led up to that over time?
For me, it was overnight.
Okay.
Because of my training, and I've always been able to sense things well.
Mm-hmm.
So I could sense if a muscle's working or not working. I could get my body to shift quickly, and I could feel it happen overnight. And
Wow.
for clients I work with, those who can feel their body and know, okay, I can feel that muscle contract or not, they change quickly.
Wow.
For those who don't feel their body, they take longer, and we have to go a very step-by-step process. But it's awesome when they all of a sudden feel that switch. And I was working with a gentleman yesterday, and he's mostly financial in his mind, not really in his body. But he felt a switch, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I could feel that." Now that's neat, because
Oh.
I just convinced someone who thought I was crazy and wacky that no, I'm not, that really you can feel these things happen in your body, and it's not woo woo. Nothing against woo woo, but it's not woo woo.
Right.
It's true. You just lost this connection to be able to feel that, and we just have to get it back.
Hey, it's Lexi. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. This episode is sponsored by Heron Holistics, Functional Labs, and Homeopathy. Heron Holistic's goal is to bring empowerment back to you in your wellness journey. By using functional lab tests like the hair tissue mineral analysis, Heron Holistics is able to provide you with individualized protocols that are unique to you and your life circumstances. You can learn more about working with a qualified practitioner through Heron Holistics by visiting heronholistics.com and finding the service and booking guide, also available here in the show notes. Mention the Holistic Ascent podcast to get 10% off your services. Now, let's get back to the show. I think a lot of us are walking around thinking we have great nervous systems, but we might be living in fight or flight. Are there certain signs and symptoms that someone might experience that would point towards maybe we could use a little extra support here, or a method like the PABR method?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of just some general signs. Let's go physical. So physical, you have pain. Pain is chronic. You feel tight, hamstrings tight, calves tight, forearms tight, low back tight, hip flexors tight. If you feel tightness somewhere, you know you're in a guarded state. If for breathing, you feel like you're shallow breathing, you feel like you can't get enough air in, you short of breath, you catch yourself holding your breath, those types of things. Sleeping, if you have a racing mind, you wake up in the middle of the night with heart palpitations or nightmares. You fall asleep, but then wake up and you can't get back to sleep. You wake up in the morning, you don't feel rested. Those are some signs as well. Relational signs would be you're short-tempered or you're emotionally reactive to stuff. You spill a glass of water and you get very upset about that. So those would be some signs as well. Maybe you scream at your kids and you don't want to do that, and you're upset that you do that, but you're short-tempered in the sense that your child does something and you get triggered. And so even before you can think about it, the scream has come out of your mouth. So I would say that as well. Spiritually, you might feel unsettled, and maybe you have a connection that you usually have, but then you can't feel that connection. So you know you're in fight or flight mode as well. Those are like the main ones. There's more, but those are the ones I can think of quickly off the top of my head.
I think that's great. And those are very easily recognizable things that someone can say, oh, I'm experiencing this. Then I need to reach out to Dr. Amy. I need to work with her. Oh my goodness. Very cool. Well, as an endurance athlete, I'd love to dig into this a little bit too, because I like to talk about athletics and I'm really into sort of biohacking in more natural ways. It's kind of what I dug into when I was in my master's in high altitude exercise physiology. But I'd love to know, like, do you have any specific pieces of advice for endurance athletes out there? Aside from maybe implementing this specific method that and working with you to regulate the nervous system, do you have any other tools you use to support the nervous system amidst the stress of long-term endurance exercise?
So when I do a 50 miler or a 100 miler, I go into it pushing myself, but thinking, how calm can I be from the very beginning?
Mm.
And as I'm running, I'm thinking, okay, keep myself calm, work on the breathing mechanics during the race, and see if I can feel my whole torso, my ribs stay down, my legs move with ease.
Mm.
Because we really want the turnover to happen at the hips and to feel like it's flowing.
Right.
Same thing at the shoulder blades and the arms. And I know I'm going to get distracted. If I'm running a race, I'm looking at the trees, the birds, a rabbit ran by, people cheering. I'm looking at different things. But as soon as I start to feel my body start to tighten up or something shift, I need to get on to, okay, if my left knee starts hurting, okay, I'm going to start to exhale, put my heel down to feel my hamstring because I know my hip flexor took over and tightened up. So I have to get the hip flexor to turn off and the hamstring to kick in, and I'll work on that. And within a couple minutes, that goes away. So I know I repositioned my body. I calmed down a part of my body that kicked in. And so, along with that, nutrition is a big, important factor. So, what you eat and drink affects your gut, and your gut is very tied into the nervous system. So, we want to make sure that you're supporting your gut. So, we want to support it as best as possible. So, during a run, depending on the length of the run, you want to make sure you're getting in the right nutrition and hydration because everything will fall apart if you don't have enough water. It just will. And if your electrolytes get off balance, that will affect you as well. But a lot of times people used to think that cramps had to do everything with electrolytes. Not always. So it also has to do with your nervous system. And I have a great story about that too, that I can talk about if you're interested in on how cramping isn't just nutrition and electrolytes, if you want to
I
hear.
would love to hear.
So one time I was running a marathon. It's called your mitten challenge. So up in Michigan and Wisconsin, the mitten states, you do a marathon one day and you go over to the next state and do the marathon the next day.
Oh my goodness.
So I was in the middle of the second marathon, the second day, and I believe it was Kenosha. And we were running a marathon and we had just run a fast marathon the day before, or a hard marathon in the strong winds the day before. And so the second one was very hilly. And I was in the middle of the race and I saw this gentleman pass me, like specimen of perfect beauty in his body. He looked to be Kenyan, Ethiopian, and I don't mean to stereotype, but just beautiful body, thin, very toned, just flew by me. And I'm like, okay, this guy is probably going to win this race. And so I'm just running, continuing my journey. And probably about mile 22, 23, I see him walking and limping, and I pass him by. And so I was very sad for him because I knew something had tightened up on him.
Yeah.
And so I finished the race and I was hanging out at the finish line waiting for my cousin to join me at the finish line because he was running as well. And I see this gentleman come in limping. And so as soon as he crosses the finish line, the medical staff kind of come right at him to help him. A friend of his was on the other side of the finish line and they put him in a wheelchair immediately. And they hadn't kicked me out of the finish line area yet. So I very quickly and quietly just went up to him as medical staff are coming and they have him in the wheelchair. They're trying to get more help and he's grimacing. And I just whispered to him, I said, "Hey, can I help you?" And he just kind of nodded, but he's like crying out. And I said, "Just follow my words." And I put my hand on his chest. And I said, "Just follow what I say." And so I guided him and I said, as you exhale, I said, let my hand press your chest down. Just relax into my hand and just let go. And we did this for about 30 seconds. And I just kind of gave him a gentle pressure on his chest. I don't recommend anyone do this because you don't want to break ribs or anything, but I knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I guided his rib cage down, and all of a sudden his eyes popped open. And he looked around, he's like, it's all gone. It's all gone.
Wow.
The cramp's gone. And he stood up from the wheelchair and he started walking around, and all the medical staff is like, what just happened? This guy was in a crisis.
Wow.
He get the cramping. They thought it was all electrolyte issues. He's severely dehydrated. He literally stood up, walked around. I just kind of backed away because I didn't want him to kick me out of the finish line area because I'm waiting for my cousin. And so he walked around, and his friend's like, hey, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm totally fine. I'm hungry. Let's go eat. And like totally just walked off. The medical staff's like, what in the world just happened?
Oh my
And the
goodness.
guy, I don't even know if he remembers what happened or anything that I was there, because we didn't even have any interaction after that. And he just took off walking. That was it.
Wow. That's incredible.
All of his cramping was nervous system related. His rib cage had lifted up too much. His muscles had kicked in too much. His pelvis had tipped forward too much. The hip flexors and quads cramped.
Wow. His body went into almost that like shocked state because he was like overdrive.
Mm-hmm. It was too much fight or flight.
Yeah.
So I helped him guide his ribs down as he exhaled. Told him to let his belly come out as he exhaled. His body just calmed down. His back released. His hip flexors released. His quads released. He was fine.
Oh my goodness.
There's a lot to be said if you're doing endurance running. Nutrition, electrolyte balance, super important. Hydration, super important. It's not always the answer, though.
Right.
Really consider your nervous system. I can't say it enough.
I feel like I have so many like wheels turning in my own head now from my own experiences. And I'm like, wow, I think I could use a little TLC with my own nervous system here. Do you happen to have any techniques at all that we could be guided through during this conversation that would help someone become more in tune with their body and their nervous system as we're sitting here right now?
We could do a little bit of the seated breathing, and I can guide you through that. There's a lot more to it, so we'll only do a piece of it because I space it out over. So when I work with someone, I work with them and then I give them a week to practice and then we work again. So I'll just be teaching you the first part because we can't do the second part of it just because, well, you need time practicing the first part to be able to get to the second part.
Makes sense.
So if you're sitting, go ahead and sit in your chair. If you can, sit all the way back in your chair. Try not to arch your back. If you have a pillow back there that's shoving your back forward, if you don't need it, take it out. If you need it because of pain issues, leave it in. Okay, then you're a little bit more complicated and there's more to work on. But if you don't need it, take it away. Now I want you to let your low back fall into the back of the chair and tuck your tailbone under a little bit. So it'll feel, for those who are used to sitting on the edge of the chair, it'll feel like they're slouching a little bit, and that's okay. And then you want your feet flat on the ground. If you look at the height of your knees versus the crease of the front of your hip, if your knees are lower than your hips, ideally you want to get your knees higher. So either at the height of your hip crease or a little bit higher. So that means lower the chair or put some books under your chair. And for the sake of this, if you don't have time to do that right now, don't worry about it. But I would do that and actually sit that way all the time. Okay. Then we're going to do one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Okay. Your hands will serve to help you sense what's happening to yourself. Okay. And so for this, we're just going to work on exhalation. Just observe how you inhale, but you're not going to change your inhalation. Okay. We're just going to do a few breaths here. So we're going to gently breathe in your nose. Observe how you're breathing. Pause for a second. Now exhale through your mouth. Open your mouth, exhale so you can hear the air coming out as if you're blowing out through a straw. Then you're going to breathe in gently through your nose, directing your air backwards, and blow out blow out through your mouth. Hear the air coming out of your mouth. Hold. And breathe in. Gently breathe in your nose. And blow out. Feel the air going out of your mouth. Feel the chest melt in under your hand. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose. And blow out. Feel the chest melt in under your hand. Feel your belly spill out under your lower hand. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose gently. Observe what's happening. Now blow out. Feel your chest melting away from your hand. Feel your rib cage dropping down, your belly spilling out. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently. And blow out. Feel the chest melt in. Feel the armpits relax. Feel the belly spilling out. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. And blow out. Feel your chest sinking in, sinking away from your hand, away from your shirt as you relax into the chair. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. And blow out. Feel the chest go in, your collarbones drop down. Feel the armpits relax, your shoulders drop down with your ribs. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in gently. And blow out. Feel the chest melt in. Feel the ribs drop down, your low back relaxes as your butt cheeks relax. Hold. And breathe in. Feel the air go in your nose gently. And blow out. Feel the ribs drop down, your chest melts in, your belly spills out. Hold. One more. And breathe in. Feel the air go in. And blow out. Chest melts in. Feel the wave going down your body. And take a break. So, how did that feel? Could you feel the chest going in at all? Could you feel the belly coming out?
Yeah, I felt like the more I did it, the more I could feel my chest moving. Like at first I felt kind of tight and rigid.
Yeah.
But I could feel my body just start to relax more the more I was doing it.
Yep. So the fact that at the beginning you couldn't feel your breastbone or chest move, that tells you your body's in a state of fight or flight.
That makes sense. I'm not surprised.
Nothing against it. So just something
Right.
to learn about yourself. But to
Yeah.
help you sleep at night, you want to feel that breastbone melt in when you're sleeping. So curl up on your side and you want to feel that go in. And it's so beautiful because once you start to feel that go in as you're exhaling, your body gets very sleepy and often just falls right to sleep.
I mean, I'm already like so much more relaxed right now. I'm like, what were we talking about? No.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's incredible. So if someone wants to work with you, how can we find what you're doing and how can we work? Do you do group programs, one-on-one? What does that look like?
Sure. So right now it's one-on-one.
Okay.
If someone has a business or a company that they want me to come in and I can do a virtual session for the whole group, I can do that as well. I haven't done group sessions. I used to do them a couple of years ago. I haven't done them lately. Just I've been busy with a little toddler and working one-on-one with people. That's mostly how I work right now. I do have courses though. But the best way is go online. My website is pabrinstitute.com, PABR Institute.com. You can set up a free consultation. I only work with people after I've had a consultation with them because I want to make sure we're on the same page and they understand what they're getting into. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. You can email me and Amy at PABRInstitute.com and we can go from there.
That's incredible. Does it look like a long-term program? Is it like weekly meetings?
Sure. So working one-on-one, it's either 6, 12, or 24 sessions to start. You can renew as many times as you want, but at minimum, we do 6 sessions. There's so much to teach you that even 6 sessions, it's hard to get all of it in.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that you have a change in your body. So we do a minimum of 6 sessions and then go from there.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Amy. This has been so incredible and just so eye-opening for me. And I know it will be so valuable for my audience. So thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Lexi. Thanks for being open to learning this and giving it a whirl and trying it on air. So I appreciate that. And thanks for what you do.
Most definitely. I hope you all enjoyed this podcast with Dr. Amy Novotny. I really appreciated her unique perspective that really still ties back into our actual human physiology and anatomy and how the body is designed to function, and that she's developed this entire method based off of it. I was actually thinking right as we were finishing up our conversation, I know I need some more nervous system regulation myself. This year has been one for the books as far as moving around quite a bit, not being able to live in our current house due to health and environmental conditions and so many other things. And amidst that, just working our booties off to be able to pay for it and everything. So I know that my nervous system has not been in an ideal spot this entire last year. And it really clicked for me when she was talking about the experience she had while she was running her marathon, and how there was this individual experiencing the muscle cramps, and it's not always related to electrolytes. And I just think that's so profound. And I was thinking into my own personal experience. I have been doing a lot of running lately, as well as some fun adult ballet classes. And my calves, I started having these issues with my calves where they just like wouldn't release. I was doing all of my things that I thought I should be doing. I was taking my homeopathic remedies. I was putting on my TENS unit after ballet. I was stretching. I was making sure I was warming up and doing all these things. And of course, I was staying on top of my electrolytes because I'm all about the minerals over here. And it was so interesting to me because I feel like it all clicked. It was like, wow, maybe my body was trying to protect me through all of this by seizing up a little bit. Like, hey, no, let's not do this intense running right now because maybe the body isn't in a position to be able to recover from this very well. And this is causing more stress on the nervous system during this season. And so it really just got the wheels turning in my head when I was hearing her talk about this. And I'm like, wow, I think my calf cramping was literally because of that. And I'm just so appreciative that I can have these different perspectives and different approaches and tools in my wellness toolkit now. I'm definitely going to be reaching out to Dr. Amy to see about working together and being able to get more of a grip on my nervous system in a different way that I haven't tried before. And I'm really excited for that. So I'll keep you all in the loop. But if you found this episode valuable, if you learned something new from it, I'd love to know. Did you try that breathing exercise and feel like you were put into a more sedative state? I sure did. I think that means my body really needed it. So anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and I will see you in the next episode of the Holistic Ascent podcast. Thanks all.